Just to talk about Bronto and set some context. We're an Irish startup, about almost 2 years on the go, just over 2 years on the go. We've kind of come out of stealth mode. We've built a solution which we believe is unique in the observability space. So we're going up against the likes of Datadog, Grafana, who you might have heard about. We think we know we're lower cost than them. We know we're higher performance. We built our own tech stack. We don't use any databases like ClickHouse, or we don't use Elasticsearch. We have our own technology. I could talk about that for loads of time if anyone wants to. The benefits of doing that. Big data. In my last role for a previous kind of instance of this kind of logging observability type systems, we were getting around 700 terabytes a day. We're not at that level yet in Bronto, but we will be not too soon. So we have people who do, send us 150 terabytes a month of logging data, tracing data, and metrics data will be soon. We're releasing that soon, end of the month. And also, it's not just storing the data, which is the kind of to some extent the easy part. People like to search that data. So we have guys who do searches of maybe 300 terabytes worth of data. They go back over 30 days or 90 days worth of logs. They may have 50 predicates in the query. And that takes, they generally take around 10 seconds. Some of our competitors, that take hours. So we think we have a niche. So that's the first piece of that out of the way. Now, that's the kind of spiel about Bronto. So what problems of pricing problems did we have? So the first thing is the types of data are very different. Logging, metrics, tracing. Very different types of data. So how do I charge for them? So at the moment, people charge for those per gigabyte for logs, data points for metrics, per host. Per host is one that a lot of people charge for, which is really dangerous because it leads to a real high cardinality. So you can explode your bill very quickly. So you can have lots of, if you add stuff onto a host, lots of new metrics onto a host, you get charged for each of those, and it kind of gets very complicated. So the other thing a lot of people think is it's about the volume of data you send. Okay? It's not just about the volume of data. It's how long you retain the data. How long you're going to keep it for. Because maybe you're using it just for debugging and you only keep it for a week. That's fine. That's often a common use case. But maybe you want to do historical analysis. Then you want to keep it for longer. All our accounts have 12 months retention by default. And we think this is going to become even more important in kind of a lot of AI use cases, because AI, what it likes is to be able to go back over previous investigations that it's seen, so it maybe tell you to do this time round. So we think retention is going to be a big part. So that's why you shouldn't have to pay too much for it. Is it hot or cold? Sometimes indexing is a big piece. When you do those big searches, you need to index. So indexing generally comes with a cost. So our competitors would say they break down data between hot data, which you can search, which has an index, and cold data, which doesn't have an index. Or you have to rehydrate in some way to create an index. So that comes with a cost. So generally, there's a cheaper version if you keep cold data. Index data is more expensive. And then there's a processing cost. Do you charge for the processing cost? Because a search which does over 300 terabytes is going to be a lot more processing than a search that takes over 1 terabyte or one. So how do you do these things? And it's the cost to ingest, parse, and store the data, search the data, different data types, different formats. And then do I charge for additional features? If I add in some AI services to look at investigation reports, analyze your logs, analyze your metrics to say, this is the problem. So a lot of the time you'll get good results from AI if you give it the right information. But do I charge you for that? How do I charge you for that? So that's this kind of space we face. So we could charge for, per gigabyte for logs, per host for metrics, per data point for metrics. We could charge you for extra search. We could charge you for big search. We could charge you for AI features. We could charge you for things in the search. But what the customer wants, he doesn't want to have so many different charges applied to him, really. He doesn't want to have to pay for different things. You could say this is control over his costs, but at another level, it's just control because the costs are so high. Customers, believe it or not, Gartner estimate that 20% of your infrastructure cost goes on observability, which is wrong. It's just plain wrong. So you shouldn't be costing that much just to monitor what you have. So you want clear charging for ingest, retention, and search. Clear free usage. Every product will have a certain amount of free usage. But do you really know what it means? And how much is free actually equate to your day-to-day use? And so we did this to some of our competitors and opened up accounts. And it's really hard to figure out when the free usage ends and starts. And when you've used it up, and whether do you get it the next month. Again, some people charge for features in the search. You may not be able to group by without paying for it. So this limits what you can do. So another competitor charges per gigabyte hour for compute. So if you're charged per gigabyte hour for compute, it's not in their interest to make your search faster and more efficient because they'll charge you less for it. So that's one and you have no idea what that means. When you do something you don't know it's going to take how many gigabyte hours. Now that might work with something like serverless code in Amazon where you're kind of very close to it. But when you're using a service which you're not writing, you don't have that control. So the other thing is, a lot of people in this space have a fear of a very high bill. They don't know about the bill because they may not see their usage data. One of the companies, you don't actually see the cost until every month in your bill. Your usage does not equate to the cost nicely in their product. It's very hard to find out what they're charging for the extras. I worked for a company a few years ago which had an unexpected bill, increase in their bill of $80,000 in a month because one guy, by mistake, had set up a script that did a load of metrics in every host. It was only supposed to be on his host, but he deployed it into production, and it went on to every host in the system, created a whole load of custom metrics, and suddenly his bill was $80,000 a month, which is not very nice if you weren't expecting it. And not very nice for that developer to realize he's done that. But that can happen when you have these complex pricing charges which are not upfront. So how do I see usage? Can I see how costs accrue? Some products don't give you the usage until 24 hours later, which is kind of mad. So can I break them down per user? Can I see which users are causing the most usage? You know, we find that some users have very big searches. Other users don't. So is the company paying for a guy just to explore and learn about the data or to use the data? Can I limit usage? How do you limit usage? I have to limit usage in some way. But if I'm taking in observability data, you're over your quota. Do I drop your data? It means that you're losing data you don't know you're losing because I've decided to drop it. Do I stop you running a search because you're in the middle of an investigation and you've used up your search quota? Do I do that? Or do I give you some leeway? So that's the kind of space we're in. So, so it's very complex, generally. So we set out that we would do something kind of different for charging. So we said, okay, we have to simplify this. There are too many variables to control. It's a really multivariable problem if you have so many different charges that you can't even predict the usage for people. You can't say what their bill is going to be. When they start adding a new feature, they don't know what it's going to cost them. And really, we should be enabling users to use as much as they can of the data, search as much as they want to, with all the nice features we can give them for as cheap a price as possible. Low cost. Sounds a bit like Ryanair, maybe. But it's low cost, but high quality. So we try and make it simple. Per gigabyte at ingestion. We charge you 10 cents per gigabyte when you send it to us. Okay? Standard retention 12 months, so there's no different options. All search features included. All data's hot. Now, there's an architectural reason we can do some of that, which is basically we use the same stack at ingestion and search, which we developed, but we vary the storage technology used, which we've developed as well, various columnar formats depending on the type of data we have. So because we have basically the same ingestion pipeline, because we have the same search pipeline with some variations, and we store data similarly but with different columnar formats, we can work out a cost. Okay, so again, architecture and the architectural decisions you make early on define how you charge. So, and that's kind of, in essence, the main point I'd like to make here. To think about, okay, we can think about pricing and how we integrate with Stripe and all those type of good things. But thinking about the problem in a broader sense, what usage do you have to monitor? How do you charge it? How do I make it work? And how do I present it to users as easily as possible so they're not worried about this unpredictable bill, this $80,000 for a month of usage that some developer just did by mistake? So you need a quota of some description because people will abuse your system. Get used to that. If you give something that people can search a lot of data, they will search a lot of data. So we have a policy of setting quotas at a certain level, which we don't expect anyone in reasonable use to hit. It's exceptional use case. And even then, we might waive the charges if it's the guy is in a level of an incident. So we're flexible with that. We understand people, what they're trying to do. But again, quotas are for protection, that you don't run away, people don't run away with the system. We do the same for search. We have a quota for search. For AI usage, any of the services use AI. We've built a number of services that use AI. Again, we do that a little bit like OpenAI and Anthropic and Claude in the sense that you get a certain amount of AI for 15 minutes, then cost. You get a certain amount of credits for an hour, and a certain amount of credits for the day, and then the week. So it controls your usage. So you'll learn to leverage that yourself. So, because in this world, runaway scripts are a problem. People do an API call, they do loads of calls, but it's not just the number of calls, it's what those calls do. If a search is doing a big search of a lot of data, you decide instead of someone doing a 90-day search, they do a 365-day search. That's a lot of data generally. Okay, so again, charging drives, our model for charging is driven by the architecture and drives the architecture. So can I predict and control my bill? I said that's what I want to be able to people to do. Well, first off, if you're going to do a search, we'll tell you how many bytes you're going to use before you search. We'll say this search is going to use 5 terabytes, 100 gigs, 10 terabytes, 50 terabytes, 100 terabytes, 300 terabytes before you do it. Then you can decide whether you want to do it or not. And then we warn users if you're approaching the quota, so they'll know. And so they can ask us to increase their quota. Clear up-to-date usage info. So we have a usage page that's updated pretty much in real time, pseudo real time. So again, you can see how much you're using, and you can calculate your bill because it's a very simple relationship to the number of gigabytes ingested. So that means that we have a very simple approach to charging across a range of products. So that means we could define the classic three online subscriptions. There's the low one, there's the medium one, and then there's the enterprise one. This is where we use Stripe. Again, because we can define these in nice simple terms, we have 3 plans. So you can sign up, the $25 can be a starter or it can be a 14-day free trial. So again, we use Stripe for setting up that subscription really nice and easily. The other option is we also use AWS Marketplace because some companies, it's a very convenient way for them to do their enterprise approvals. A lot of them are set up for AWS Marketplace. So it's an easy place for them to set up and do contracts and do all invoicing, all that type of stuff. It's a nice environment for the bigger type enterprises who aren't going to do a subscription plan. Okay? So how am I doing for time? Okay, not too bad. So how do we set up subscriptions? Well, there's a set of steps we do. We resolve the plan selection. Again, limited number of plans makes this easier. Create the Stripe custom. Again, really nice APIs in Stripe to do that. We create the Stripe subscription. We then set up a contract and limit the sync. We set up the contract and what the limits are, synchronize. We go from HubSpot into Stripe for some of this. And then if it's a previous subscription, someone's updating it, we'll cancel the other one and start a new one. It's not much code at all. So that's very easy. So, but then I was going on my whole talk, most of my talk right now has been about usage. So how does our usage work? Well, so this is where we are slightly different, but again, because we're different, we can do things easily. So on receiving data, you log the volume of data received. How many gigabytes? We have usage of that. When you search data, we log the volume of data searched. We have storing logs, storing metrics, so we store our own metrics. That's useful operationally, never mind for billing. So that's why we keep them, because we analyze logs, we analyze search times against size of logs, size of metrics, size of traces. So we need that data. But it's also really useful because we keep it. So we then we surface this data to show the user how much of their quota is used up and remaining. So that's on, we can do that. We can alert if they've exceeded thresholds. We actually give them an alert if they're getting close to quotas. We can show estimate quota use before the search starts. I mentioned that earlier in the last slide. And we can maintain a record of their usage and synchronize to billing providers, i.e. to Stripe. So we just use Stripe for subscriptions and then usage. We already have subscription plans. So we have all the plan details. We've set up the customer. We've set up the plans. So what we needed was a nice, easy way to send usage data. So thankfully, Stripe had that to a real price. So it's actually, believe it or not, quite hard in other vendors to do this. Because they want to hold all your usage data. We're saying, no, we have our usage data. We just want to send you enough to tell you about for overcharging for the plans. So that kind of led us into, and on top of that, their APIs weren't terribly nice. I won't mention any companies, but you probably know more than I do about some of them. So Stripe was really easy for us because we had the plan subscription stuff, and we had our usage stuff, and we have our own metrics for that. So how did we use that with Stripe? Well, we already have the stuff to track it. Stripe Basic and Metronome both have meters. So that worked out nicely for us because they mapped one-to-one pretty much the metrics we keep. So, and they have nice APIs. So we didn't use Metronome because we're not big enough yet to use Metronome. So we used the Basic plan. So we just send that. So what issues do we face there? See, there's a little bit of code. I promise you there'll be a little bit of code. It was worth waiting for. Look, this is how simple it is. We create a meter with some IDs, the payload, Stripe customer ID, which we have, the quantity of bytes, the set event name, meter name, what meter is, set the timestamp, and off we go. Now, what are the problems with that? Well, first off, there's a limited number of concurrent requests. Remember, our use case is slightly different. We're doing overage. So it's not necessarily real time. We have the usage already built up, so we're not doing huge amounts of stuff, so that was nice. So we batch it. We batch the usage to Stripe. We're monitoring the usage ourselves, so we can warn our customers and we can do that real-time updates. But for the billing purposes, we send it to them by batch. So we send chunk of events to the metering API, and like there. So at the moment we only do it for overage because it's only overage we're charging for. A certain amount of terabytes under the quota are in your per gigabyte price anyway. If you buy 100 terabytes of 1 terabyte storage off us, you get 100x search terabytes. So again, easy plan has made this actually somewhat unexpectedly. We ended up with a really nice, easy usage relationship because the Stripe APIs are nice. Basically, because we had thought of usage at the very beginning. We looked at the problem at the beginning. So you see a lot of the other companies in the space, they evolved. So they added charges on along the way. One of the things about starting from scratch is you can start, okay, we want a simple pricing model. How do we do it? These are the complexities everybody else has. So this is what we'll do. So we now have a very simple model. So we found the Stripe API is intuitive and powerful. Now, the guy who wrote that stuff, he was supposed to be here today, but he's sick, unfortunately. So that's the other reason why there's not so many coding questions. But it worked out really nicely for us. And the other thing we were looking forward to is when Metronome is more fully integrated in, how the AWS marketplace will go, because we could maybe like to do that piece with our bigger customers tied in with this stuff a little bit more as well. Because we have overage for our bigger customers, we do that through Marketplace, because Marketplace has similar mechanisms. And again, the same type of thing worked there quite nicely for us. So that's the story. A nice, happy story, I think. Where can you find us? Bronto.io, LinkedIn, lots of blogs. We blog fairly regularly, mostly on observability stuff, but a lot of stuff about how we use AI, how we're building AI agents, how we're experimenting with MCP, how we're experimenting with LangGraph and those type of things, how we're trying to build AI into our services, again, at a level which will work. Again, you can start a free trial. And that's it. Thank you.